You're listening to Your Magical Midlife. This podcast is for women who are seekers, dreamers, and out-of-the-box thinkers. If you're a Gen X woman who never quite fit in, and probably never will, listen up. I'm Kate Higgins, your host. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and coach, and I'm here to guide you through the expansive, exhilarating, and sometimes exhausting crossroads that we find ourselves in at midlife. Whether you're a seasoned listener or just joining the adventure, think of this podcast as your hot pink convertible cruising down the highway of change. Together we'll navigate the sometimes baffling backroads of midlife and collect all the cool souvenirs along the way. Get in and buckle up. Our map may have flown out the window miles ago, but that doesn't mean we aren't going to have a blast. Let's hit the road and discover the magic just around the bend. Rosebud Woman was developed in response to women's unaddressed needs for beautiful, luxurious products that provide relief and pleasure for all women, whether it be for period pain, perimenopausal woes, or menopause symptoms. Intimate wellness products are often designed to use with a sexual partner or medicalized to treat a diagnosed issue. Rosebud Women feels ceremonial, like I'm doing a beauty ritual while addressing my 50-year-old body's needs. Their everyday honor balm is gynecologist tested and hormone free. It hydrates, conditions, and replenishes intimate skin. It's excellent for pregnancy, perimenopause, menopause, and any other hormonal changes. Use the affiliate link in my show notes for 20% off. You can check out their products at www.rosebudwoman, that's ROSEWOMAN.com. Check out all their beautiful products and use the affiliate code in the show notes. Holly Lamb is a UK-based wellness coach who shifted her focus to perimenopause after being diagnosed in her early 30s. Her podcast, No Fucks Given, covers everything physical, emotional, and spiritual about going through menopause. On this episode of Your Magical Midlife, Holly and I go on a deep dive about how all women should be taught to live in harmony with our natural cycle, whether you're still bleeding or not. Hey, Holly, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
Good. Thanks so much for coming on my show, even though you're midlife adjacent. You're not technically over 40 yet, but I wanted to bring you on because you have a unique experience. And I think a lot of women in their 30s need to be aware of what's going on in their bodies and to know that even in your 30s, your body starts to shift.
Mm-hmm. Oh, God. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Tell the audience how you got into the work that you do.
So I started off as a personal trainer. So training mainly women. And then women of a certain age, like mid-40s would come to me and then they'd be talking about menopause and perimenopause. And I really didn't know anything about it. So kind of started to deep dive into that, understand what happens to your body when you go through perimenopause and beyond. And then whilst on that journey at the end of 2022, started having similar symptoms, irregular menstrual cycle, problems with my skin, really feeling overwhelmed, really anxious, which is completely new for me. And then at the end of 2022, got diagnosed with early menopause at the age of 35. And then that's kind of how that's evolved from there. And then since then, I've done various qualifications around how to train, how to manage symptoms, how to help other women, how to do it in a more holistic way, as well as deep diving more into the menstrual cycle and understanding how powerful our menstrual cycle is and how basically we can use it to our advantage in life, in business, because we are cyclical beings. And that's led me to this point now.
That's so amazing. When you were first diagnosed, how did you feel about it?
It was a bit of a shock because, 30, 35, and I was just like, okay, like the narrative, the media is all it's 50 plus and, you know, your periods just stop and that's it. And you get hot flushes and that's about it. So it was a bit of a shock. I mean, luckily for us, children isn't really on the cards anyway. It wasn't something that we wanted to pursue. So for most women, I think that would be the issue. But for us, it wasn't. So that was, you know, quite lucky. But having that kind of diagnosis at that age, most women still either having a family or want to have a family. So I was quite lucky in that respect. And then also, when I was diagnosed, speaking to my mum, and she was like, yeah, I was about your age as well. And I was like, all right, thanks. Thanks for kind of letting me know. But again, it's not something that moms would speak to their daughters about, even though it's basically half of your life.
Sure. At least half of your life. I mean, my mother didn't really tell me anything on either side, either when I was going through puberty or when I started perimenopause,
Mhm.
except for, yeah, you know, you don't have as much time as you think you're going to have to whatever. And even though when that started for me, I was still ambivalent about children,
Yeah.
I felt like opportunities were just kind of being taken from me anyway, even if it wasn't just around children, because I think our society puts so much emphasis and so much value on being young. It was
Yeah.
hard for me because my symptoms started like around the time I turned 40, maybe a little before.
Mhm.
Now that I think back in retrospective, I'm like, oh, yeah, my period changed length. It changed when I was expecting it. And I started to feel a lot of anxiety. I think that was my first symptom was anxiety, maybe before my period started to shift around.
Mhm.
But nobody told me that anxiety was a perimenopause symptom. No one told me.
No, people
Yeah.
just talk about the physical symptoms when actually that's not always the most difficult thing to deal with. It can be the mental symptoms, especially if mental health is something that you've maybe not been around or exposed to or gone through. Like me, to me, it was like a big shock, like not wanting to leave the house, feeling anxious, overwhelmed about just little things that you shouldn't feel that way about. So yeah, it was a shock.
Yeah. And it's very isolating, especially when it starts to happen to you younger and people aren't talking about it. And you feel like, oh no, am I the only one who's having symptoms or a problem or anxiety or depression or, you know, all these things? And because we're told like, oh, it's not going to happen to you till you're 51, they act like on your 51st birthday, you're going to have a hot flash, your period is going to go, and you're going to look in the mirror and you're just going to be an old woman. But they don't
Yeah.
talk about that it's really like a 15-year process.
Mhm.
And really no one talks about like then on the other side of it, what happens to you. It's like, oh, you're just a dried up husk. And it's gonna be this horrible process for you to become like essentially like a dried up old blown in the wind leaf. You know, it's very negative. How do
Yeah.
you counter that with the people you work with, the women you work with?
Yeah. So for me, it's a completely different perspective. And it's about, yes, we're dealing with all the emotional, physical symptoms, but we're also dealing with the mindset and the perception shift. And we're looking at this from the perspective of this is happening for me, not to me, so that we can shift that perception. Because I really truly believe that the reason some women go through such severe symptoms is because we are so disconnected from our bodies in the modern society that we live in. And we aren't taught to live cyclically, which we should be because our hormones are roughly 28 days, you know, give or take, when you're having a regular menstrual cycle, but it's still cyclical, whereas men, it's more 24 hours. And that's where society is built around the 24-hour cycle, whereas women, it's 28 days. So it's understanding how you can live in harmony with that cycle in order to bring yourself and your body back into alignment. And this is what I have done. Like one of my symptoms was irregular periods, erratic, all over the shop. And by focusing on my body going inwards and living in harmony with my cycle, it has brought it back into a 26 to 29 day cycle, which is really regular now. I can tell when I'm ovulating, I can tell when, I'm about to come on my period. And it's quite amazing to have that level of knowledge just from tuning back in and listening to your body.
Yeah, that's amazing. I wish I had learned this while I was still bleeding. Can you please, because I know this is the work that you do, can you please explain to me what is, like, how do you live in your cycle? How does it work? Are there things that you do on certain days? Are there things you avoid on certain days? Talk us through the process. Because again,
Yes.
like, basic biology is not something that I was taught. Like, I think I was given a cursory, like, there's a luteal phase and then you bleed. And that was kind of all I was told. But I wasn't told that there's a purpose to each portion of your cycle.
Yeah. So I recently completed a course with the Red School, which are fantastic, which any woman can do any of their courses. You don't have to be a professional. And it's the Menstruality Leadership Program. And they love to define the phases as seasons. So in a spring, in a summer, in an autumn, and in a winter. And for me, that resonated so much more than I'm in my luteal phase, I'm ovulating, I'm in my follicular phase, I'm bleeding. So for me, in a spring is you're just coming out of your bleed. So maybe around day 5, your energy levels are starting to rise because your estrogen levels are rising. I am on day 5 or 6 today. And that's how I feel. So I've had my bleed and I can feel the energy rising. I'm more active. I want to get up and go, just generally feeling better. And that is due to the rise in estrogen. So at this time, it's a really good time to plan social events. If you are in business, then to plan speaking events. Or I know that for me, I can show up on social media easier because I can talk on camera. Whereas when I'm more in my luteal phase, I do like writing on my stories rather than showing my face on my stories. So it's just kind of putting yourself out there. And then next, when you head into inner summer, which is ovulation. So this is when your peak energy rises because testosterone is at the highest at this time. So this is when the body is preparing basically to get pregnant. So you are going to look and feel at your best because that's what the hormones are there to do because, getting back to basics, we're here to procreate. So your body is going to look and feel the best at this time, basically to get you pregnant. But you can use it to your advantage by, again, social events, getting yourself out there, planning holidays, doing, nice things, just putting yourself out there. So that's a really, really nice time of the cycle. So then as we're heading into inner autumn, this is when you are starting to head into your luteal phase. And this is sometimes when the inner critic can start to come up. And I can notice now when this kind of time is happening. So it's a really good time to start to slow down, to start going inwards, to start, yes, listening to what it has to say, not paying a lot of attention to it because it's basically going to give you a load of shit. But you can have little nuggets of wisdom in there that you can listen to, you can journal on, maybe go back when you're feeling, a bit more like yourself because it's very easy for that critic to take over. But this phase of the cycle is still important to acknowledge and work through. And if you've got shadow sides and shadow work that you need to move through, then this is a really good time to do it. And it's also a really good time to set boundaries because if you are in your people-pleasing era and you struggle to say no, inner autumn and your inner critic is the perfect time to use to your advantage and to set boundaries and to remember that no is a full sentence. You don't have to give a reason. You don't have to give because. No, that's the end of the conversation. And then finally, we're heading into our inner winter. So we're fully in our luteal phase, and this would be day 26 to day 4 roughly is inner winter. So it's just in luteal phase and then you start bleeding. So inner winter is a real time to slow down, to go inwards and to connect back to your body and your intuition, because this is when we are most connected to our intuitive higher self. So it's a really good time to journal. I kind of get like downloads at this time, write all the information down that I'm getting, but not to do anything with it, just to sit with it and then wait for the follicular phase to kick back in and then start taking action. Because yes, you can absolutely do things when you're on your period. You can move because it will help with any pain if you get cramps, but it is a time to go inwards and to slow down. And it's okay just to literally have a day where you drop everything and you're just with yourself. And that's what I did in my last bleed because I felt really, really tired. Luckily, I had meetings and stuff where I didn't have to kind of be there. I could just turn my camera off, but I was listening. And I was just with myself and my being, and it was really nice. And because I had those couple of days for me and I honored the inner winter, now my energy's rising. I'm glad I did because now I can move into the next phase. So it's quite amazing, the different phases, and I connect more with them because of the seasons, because then you can start to plan your life, your business, whatever it is around your cycle. And you'll realize, for example, if you go to the gym and you're really in your luteal phase, you're going to feel like crap and you're not going to be able to lift as heavy as you did when you were ovulating because that's normal, that's hormones. But so many women don't even know that because we aren't taught that information. So just the clarity around it's okay to feel different and to not be as strong and to be more emotional in certain times of your cycle is completely normal.
Yeah. And I think that we're so in the modern age, we're so pushed to medicalize, fix, regulate. And I'm sure, and I don't know if you want to speak to this or not, I'm sure like fluorescent lighting plays in, the way that we work plays in, like the 9 to 5 plays in. I'm sure pollution plays in, and I'm sure pharmaceuticals play in.
Mm-hmm.
In disrupting all of those things. And I would assume like chemicals and food and water play in too. So how do you do your best with this, with all those outside things? Because we're only in charge of ourselves and our own bodies. And I think doing this work is so important because people feel so disempowered. Some people be like, well, I would love to do that, but I live in a urban area and I have to work 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. or whatever, and I have to live like within the confines of my own life. So how do you do your best self-care and tune into your body with all of the outside influences that you may or may not be able to modify for?
Yeah, so a big thing that I've been working on is cultivating my inner reality that is so balanced and still and doing inner work that no matter what is happening in my outer reality, it's not affecting my inner reality. Because if we do want to change how we're feeling, our situation in life, we have to cultivate that feeling within first, and then it radiates outwards. Because if you can cultivate, and this isn't toxic positivity, this is just creating a feeling of peace and joy and pure gratitude for where you are now, that is when things will start to ripple out into your outer reality. So it's about doing the little things. We can start with that. And then it's a case of maybe buying a water filter so that you're filtering your water, little things like that. Maybe eating less meat, but buying better quality. So buying organic. There's people that say, oh, I understand people are struggling with money with certain areas, but where can you cut back on maybe going out 3 or 4 times a month, maybe go out twice and spend the rest of the money on wholesome food? Because that's where we need to put our energy on filling our body with nutritious food. Exercise costs nothing. You don't have to join a gym. You can do that at home. So it's just starting small and doing the little steps. And then when you start to eat better, move your body and feel better, that will ripple out and you will want to do more from there. So it's always baby steps.
Absolutely. I think people get really overwhelmed and feel like they have to make these massive changes, which is never successful. Every time I've tried to make some crazy extreme diet change or extreme lifestyle change, it lasted 2-3 weeks, maybe a month. and then the old behaviors creep up because it's too uncomfortable. But when I make baby steps, like doing less takeout food and shifting that money into buying better quality food at the supermarket that I prepare at home, I've noticed small changes really do add up. I don't know why people get so sucked into quick fixes and quick changes. I don't know. Why do you think they get so sucked in?
I think it's just the society we live in. We live in an instant gratification society. Look at Amazon. Like, you can literally have something sometimes there to your door the same day. Like, people don't want to wait anymore. Whereas with health, you have to put in the work, especially with food. Like, it's not difficult. It doesn't have to be difficult. You just buy whole food and you cook from scratch, and you're like doing 80% better than most people out there who are just buying ready meals. So yeah, I just think it's the instant gratification that we live in that we need to get out of this mindset, which will take time because of everything that's going on at the moment. But if you can just make small changes for you and be doing it for you and not focus on the outer reality, just focus on the inner, then that's when things will start to move and start to change.
Absolutely. So for those of us who aren't bleeding anymore, how can we live in harmony with our bodies? Is it like cyclical with the seasons, or is it cyclical with the moon, or both?
With the moon. So you can live cyclically with the moon. So traditionally, women used to bleed on the dark moon, so the new moon, and they would ovulate on the full moon. But because, like you say, fluorescent lighting, we're not as in connection with the moon as we once were. Most women are kind of out of sync of that. But if you aren't bleeding anymore, you can still follow the principles of cycling with the moon. So when the moon is dark, that's when you would be bleeding. So that is when you can go inwards, do some introspection, slow down. And then when the moon is full, that would be ovulation. So you will be at highest peak energy. You can schedule things around that. And that's a way that you can still live cyclically with the moon cycle.
I love it. We're recording this right before a new moon. So it's a good weekend to just catch up and relax and rest.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I felt really out of whack when, my periods were really all over the place. They were sliding all over the place. They were spotty. I was going months at a time without them. And then at 51, they found a spot on one of my ovaries. And the doctor recommended an exploratory procedure. And she said, I'm probably going to take this ovary out. And that was hard for me. But what was harder for me was that when I woke up, she informed me that she had taken everything.
Yeah.
And I was really unhappy. I was really, really unhappy about it because I really feel like it was completely unnecessary. She gave me a big speech about how she did me a big favor and, you have a spot here, you will inevitably, statistically have ovarian cancer on the other side, and then it could spread to your uterus and blah, 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 blah. I am a suspicious person of the medical industry anyway. So I have a lot of feelings around that. But I think women need to be more empowered. I feel like if I had been more educated, if I had been given more information, I feel like the more information you have, the more that you can have true informed consent, not just, well, my doctor talked me through it and I signed a paper and that's informed consent. I think informed consent is a much bigger issue. And women are, we're still, even in this day and age, we're still really not empowered in so many ways around our own bodies. And I think body autonomy really includes being completely aware of how our bodies function. And why aren't young girls taught this, in the 5th grade or the 4th grade before they even get their periods in the first place?
Yeah. And that's what needs to happen. And that's what needs to change. And that's what I would love to do. I'm in talks with a few places to go in and discuss the menstrual cycle in detail, not just you bleed once a month, here's a pad. Like that's literally it. That's all they get told. Like not how your menstrual cycle is like an inbuilt health check for you every month. See
Sure.
how you're getting on. If you're having really severe painful periods, there is something not aligned there, and that needs to be looked into. And not necessarily from a medical standpoint. Yes, rule out everything else like underlining, but a lot of it is unfortunately to do with like the toxins in the environment and just being not in tune with your body. So much of this I've found is just becoming back in tune with your body, and so much more comes from that, and you grow as a person. So knowing that when you're like 14 and 15, imagine like what women will achieve in another 10 years if they have this power and this knowledge at that age.
Absolutely. If I had known at age 14 or 15 that, I didn't even like know about cervical mucus or just how to monitor my fertility, I feel like I would have had a much more empowered life had this been taught to me very young. I remember buying myself a copy of a book called Our Bodies Ourselves in my mid-20s and being like, why did no one tell me any of this stuff? Why? I guess because I grew up in a very repressed, very Catholic home and bodies were just not discussed. But I feel like every girl should know how their body works. And it's a crime that we don't teach women this, that we don't teach girls this. And it's a crime that we dismiss women when they're done bleeding, when they're done being quote unquote useful.
Yeah.
But I think your generation is really shifting the conversation.
Yeah, exactly. I think because they're bringing more awareness to the fact that it can happen earlier for whatever reason. It's bringing it into focus so that more women are having conversations about it earlier, and they know what's going to happen, and they know it can be like a 10-year process before you even get to menopause. And then post-menopause, you can still have symptoms for a few years. Sometimes postmenopausal symptoms can be worse than perimenopausal symptoms for some women. And it's just having that knowledge and knowing that there are things you can do about it without having to take HRT.
Yeah. Do more young women, more like millennial women, your generation, are you finding that you are not alone with your awareness, with your interest, with your agency over your body? Is this like, do you have friends who are also like, yeah, let's tell everybody about this. Let's get empowered. Let's figure it out. Let's be aware of it.
Yeah, 100%. I'm in a couple of different spaces with women of like various ages. And I spoke in another woman's membership about how to use your menstrual cycle to your advantage in business. And like most of them had no idea about any of it and were like, I want to know more. I want to know more. So there's more interest coming out about how to live cyclically, and then how being in tune now will then help you as you head into perimenopause, because you're already in tune with your body. And you're going to notice when the slightest things start changing, symptoms, anything comes up, and you'll be more equipped to deal with it because you understand now what's happening.
Is there a spiritual component to any of this? Because in certain circles, the period is tied to manifestation or attracting and releasing. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. So like, I believe that our menstrual cycle is our inbuilt spiritual practice. Like we literally can birth life into the world through our womb, whether that's literal life or, metaphorical with ideas and things. And this is something that I'm starting to explore in regards to using it to manifest what you require. So, for example, around the time of your bleed, when you are most connected to your intuition and you are starting to get those downloads, connecting to what it is you truly desire, getting really clear on that intention and setting that intention at that time, because you're so connected to source, the divine, God, whatever you want to call it. And then as the energy levels start to rise through the first half, the follicular half of your cycle, then you can start to put things into action to bring it in to your life. Because yes, absolutely, we can sit there, set the intention and want to manifest this, but we do actually have to take aligned action and do the little steps. So that's kind of what I'm starting to dive into more now and see kind of how that would work and how that would play out, which is really interesting.
That is really, really cool. Tell me about the clients that you work with.
So I work with quite a variety of women, usually from like ages 35 to around 45-ish. So some women want to bring their menstrual cycle back into alignment, just be more healthy in that respect. Or I work with perimenopausal women who want to know what the friggin' hell's going on with their body. And it's from a whole person perspective. So it's a full lifestyle. It's fitness, nutrition, sleep, menstrual cycle. Like I said, using it as your spiritual practice, using it as your little health check. So it's looking at every aspect of their life in order to bring some kind of harmony back and for them to basically step into their most powerful, authentic self. And then they can start to craft the life that they desire from that.
I love that. I love that. What is the one thing that someone who's struggling with anxiety around being in perimenopause, what's like the one shift that they should start with?
Start blocking out the noise from the media, friends, whatever it is, who have a negative response to menopause. Because funnily, I'll just tell this story before I say, because I'm doing a free talk next Friday in my local area. So I was putting up posters and stuff and getting more, women to come. And I went into this nail salon and this woman was like, I was like, oh, can I leave some of these here? It's about perimenopause. And she was like, pro-menopause. There's nothing pro about menopause. It's crap. And then she reeled off all the reasons why. And I was like, that's exactly why you need to come. And that's unfortunately the narrative that is out there, because women have this view that it's a really, really negative thing, which I completely get it. Like if you're completely disconnected with your body and you don't know how to manage it, I get it will be a struggle. But having the mindset of this is crap, this is what's happening, all these things are happening to me for this reason is not going to change anything. So you need to cut out all the noise, detox from people, news, whatever it is that's feeding the negative narrative into your head. Go inwards and focus on you. Focus on breathing techniques, mindfulness, gratitude, bringing in joy into your life. Because once it starts on the inside, then that's when it will ripple out into your outer reality.
I love that. There's so much. I think menopause has like one of the biggest stigmas. Almost worse than the stigma around having your period.
Yeah.
The stigma around not having your period anymore. That we just discard women once they're no longer capable of reproducing, when they're no longer sexually desirable to mainstream.
Yeah.
And that is, I think for me, that was the hardest part, was feeling like I was taken away from me. And I never thought of myself as like this, like hottie. That wasn't my self-concept, but to feel like I didn't want to be just cast out at the same time. It's so hard for women because so much value is placed on the physical container that we happen to land in, right? And why do we devalue women over 50 as opposed to a man over 50? They're still probably devalued, but men, I think, hold their worth based on their status. And women hold their worth based on their fuckability or their perceived fuckability.
Yeah, agreed.
And it's really upsetting. And how do we change that narrative? You're a millennial woman, and millennial women are changing the script, which I really admire and love. Like Gen X, my generation, I think we're shifting it a little bit. But I think as time goes on, generation after generation, I'm hoping that no one ever has to feel like they have. I don't know if you're familiar with the skit that was on the Amy Schumer show about like the last fuckable day.
No, I've not seen that.
I'll send it to you in an email. It's funny and it's depressing. It's like they're celebrating Julie Louise-Dreyfus's like last fuckable day, and they put her in a canoe and like send her out to sea.
Oh, wow. That is really sad. That is sad that that's what it comes to. And that's the view of society. Whereas that's just not the case at all, because a lot of women, when their periods have stopped and there's this liberation, then it is like stepping into this era of I don't give a crap about anything and becoming more desirable. And I think you become more desirable when you give less of a fuck about what people think.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, even if your body is different and doesn't look and feel the way that it did when you were 25, it doesn't mean that your desire is gone, and it doesn't mean that your sexuality is gone. And you don't have to live on the treadmill and eat only lettuce leaves and have Botox and fillers and hair. Like everyone holds J-Lo up as like this example, but J-Lo has a whole team like keeping her looking, 32 when she's 52. And that's not a realistic standard either. Like Kim Kardashian has got to be like 45 at this point, and she's going to be held up sooner or later as like the new like hot, hot lady, like nearing 50, but she's 99%, unrecyclable plastic.
Exactly.
But not everyone wants to do that, and not everyone desires that, and not everyone can afford that. So for regular women, how do you hang on to your sexuality when everyone tells you you're done?
Yeah, it's really difficult, and it's a lot of inner work has to go on to get to that point. And I believe that like perimenopause is the time to do that, is the time to really sit with you, go inwards, and yes, face some difficult things that may come up. But if you work through it, by the time you're post-menopause, like you will not give a crap. You will love yourself so much, and that will radiate out to everyone, and that confidence will radiate out that you will attract the people that you're meant to attract.
I love that. It's a real reckoning. Perimenopause is a real reckoning. It's like when life shakes you. It's like, this what you want to be doing? Is this okay? So you built this life, then perimenopause comes along and it like gets you by the back of the neck and it gives you a good shake. And it's like, hey, girl, wake up. You know, like, did you build what you wanted to build, or do you need to like make some major adjustments? And your 40s and your 50s are about making those major adjustments.
100%.
Just exciting.
Have an awakening.
An absolute awakening. Absolute awakening. So do you work with women all over the world?
Yeah. I've worked with women in America, in Canada, and across Europe and the UK, obviously. So yeah, women from all over.
Tell us about your coaching offerings and what you do and how you help women.
So I have my one-to-one coaching, which is 6 months at a time, because I really believe that we need to like deep dive into all of your lifestyle so that I can get an understanding of you and what things we can put in place in order to basically get you feeling and looking the most amazing version of you. Basically, it's not about changing anything. It's about you having the confidence to step into the next version of you. So that's everything from, fitness, nutrition, mindset work as well, because that's a big part. All the different tools in order for you to be like, fuck yes, I'm ready to take on this next stage of life. So that's in like 6-month increments. If you weren't quite ready for that, then I do like one-off like coaching sessions. So like 1-to-1 calls, like 1 to 2 hour calls, and we can focus in on a certain area of your life, and I can give you like an action plan to kind of move forward. And then I have my monthly membership, which is just £10 a month. And I do a weekly call in there around different topics relating to women's health, the menstrual cycle, perimenopause, all those kind of things. So that would be a really good way to kind of dip your toe in and see, if you like me. Because the whole point of like working with a coach is to be able to connect with them. And if you don't resonate with them, then it's never going to work. And then obviously my Instagram, there's always like stuff on there. And I have my own podcast as well, as you know. no fucks given, because why not?
I love it. I'm going to move into our speed round and just ask you some quick questions just to get flavor of you so that people can find you. And I will drop all your links in my show notes so people can follow you. They can listen to your amazing podcast. They can work with you. You're such a delight and such a light and so needed in this space. I love that younger women are joining forces with us Gen Xers and really changing the conversation, because it has to change.
100%.
No one needs to feel like they're, shoved in a canoe.
No.
And put to
Definitely
sleep.
not. No.
Oh. Absolutely not. So coffee or tea?
Ooh, coffee.
Yeah. Do you have a snack with your coffee?
No, I just have black coffee.
Yeah?
Black, yeah. Only one, though. 2 at a push, because otherwise I'm not going to be sleeping in the evening.
Yeah. What's your favorite snack?
Oh, favorite snack. I really love these crackers. They're just like plain crackers, and I just put loads of butter on them.
Oh, like that. That sounds good.
Mm.
Do you have a favorite song right now?
I'm listening to Chantress Seba. They are a duo, and her music is just beautiful, and she does a lot of like meditative type of music, and I'm really into that at the minute. I'm meditating to that. It's beautiful.
Oh, I'll check it out. Do you have a favorite song I can drop in the show notes? You can send it to me?
I'll send it you. Yeah.
Great. If you could sidle up, if you could get in a time machine and go back, I usually ask people their 30 or 35-year-old self, but that's 2 in the recent past for you. So if you could get in a time machine and go back to your 19-year-old self, what information would you like to give her?
Oh, that's a good one. I like that one. That by the age of 35, everything will change, but will have changed for the better. And although going through this now is difficult, and you're going through it earlier than you should be, it's going to be the catalyst for your life to completely change and for you to help other women.
I love it. Holly, thank you so much for coming on my podcast. And I'm so happy we connected. You're such a delight. And I really enjoyed both of our conversations, both the one we recorded for your podcast and this one. And I'll have you on again.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kay. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to Your Magical Midlife. I'm Kate Higgins, your host. You can follow me on Instagram at Your Magical Midlife. You can also check out my offerings on my website, which is www.yourmagicalmidlife.com. I offer individualized coaching for women 45 plus who are seekers, dreamers, and out-of-box thinkers. I also offer luxury retreats that include ritual, rites of passage, and ceremony for women 45 and beyond. I'd be so excited to work with you. Also, if you're feeling kind and you've enjoyed this episode, please leave me a 5-star review, as it opens this podcast to a broader audience and keeps me in those pesky algorithms. Thank you so much for your partnership with me. I appreciate you. Have a great week.